Hello viewers, welcome to Indian Masterminds. I'm Junali Buragohain and today we have with us former Secretary to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India, Mr. Deepak Gupta. The 1974 batch, now retired IAS officer of Jharkhand cadre, was also the chairman of Union Public Service Commission. Mr. Gupta has written a book on the history of Indian administrative service. The book is titled The Steel Frame History of the IAS. We are going to ask him about the formation of IAS, the constitutional design of the IAS, about its roles, and about reforms in the service, all this in the context of his book and his own experiences in IAS. So keep watching as we take you inside the Indian Administrative Service with Mr. Deepak Gupta. Welcome to Indian Masterminds, sir.
Thank you.
What inspired you to write the book, The Steel Frame History of the IAS?
Well, while I was in the UPSC, I did a lot of reading about the history of the service. How did it start? How was it set up at the time of independence? What has been its role and performance? And what needs to be done now? I think I was able to understand the service much better. And most people, I feel, don't know much about all this. So I thought it would be both interesting and useful for officers, aspirants, as well as the general public.
In the book, you have given credit for setting up the All India services in independent India to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Please throw some more light on this.
I think there is no doubt about this at all. There was a lot of criticism of the ICS at the time of independence and led by Nehru. The provinces were all very opposed to the idea of an all India service. And in their meeting of October 1946, they expressed this opposition vigorously because they wanted control of the services. Sardar Patel argued strongly, justifying the need for an all India service which is centrally controlled and was modeled on the Indian civil service in a federal setup. He felt that only such a service could resist local political intrigues, which he considered most important. He again strongly defended the concept of the All India services in the Constituent Assembly in 1949, ensuring that the service gets constitutional safeguards. He even threatened to resign. So in doing this, I feel the Sardar rendered India a great service, and this aspect is unfortunately not very often commented upon.
What were Sardar Patel's ideas on the role of IAS and IAS officers?
Actually, I think he had many crucial ideas about the service, and I think which everybody needs to understand properly. First, he ensured its federal character. In the 1946 meeting, he had said, and I quote, and I've written this in the book, that this will put the center in close touch with the realities. It will facilitate liaison between the center and the states, and it will ensure uniformity in the application of administrative norms and standards. I think he felt that officers with the efficiency at the center, but the experience of district administration and contact with the people will introduce, vigor, both the center and the states. He wanted local administrators with national perspectives and top policy makers in the center with grassroots knowledge and experience. Secondly, he emphasized its unifying role based on his observation of its role during the chaotic period of 1946-48. In the Constituent Assembly in 1949, he said, "You will not have a united India if you don't have a good All India service which has the independence to speak its mind. And thirdly, most important now, he worried about politicization. And he believed, therefore, that this service will work the constitution. It will serve like a ring around the constitution. And he therefore assigned it a kind of protective role. He also believed that the efficient and disciplined service was a sine qua non of sound administration. And importantly, he wrote, even more so in a democratic regime than in an authoritarian one. And finally, he argued that all political considerations in the service, whether it's from the government side or whether it's from the officer side, should be removed totally. Today, I think we have ignored all this.
Okay. And what do you think is the status today? Like you said, we have ignored everything. So, what is the status today of the government and of the officers?
I think things have deteriorated since. Officers are getting caught in the political divisiveness between center and states, and between political parties and even personalities. Politicians more and more are expecting personal or party loyalties. And all over the country, we are seeing that officers are being coerced to do their bidding. And therefore, politicization has become entrenched. I think Sardar Patel has been long forgotten. Officers are also falling sort of a prey to this. Uh, he had said that officers must tend the highest standards of neutrality, impartiality, etc., and that they must perform without fear or favor, and without expectation of any reward. But in the present situation, when you are being coerced or threatened, it is not easy to do this, and therefore it is all the more important that the government be strengthened. Otherwise, good governance and the public interest will suffer.
What have been the successes and contributions of the IAS?
I think there have been some studies about this. There was a study in 2017 which comprehensively examined this, and it concluded that the biggest contribution that the IAS has made is the preservation of national unity and constitutional rule, which lies at the core of India's success as a democratic polity. Just see what is happening in Pakistan, where the steel frame never really got started. Um, I think the IAS has played a critical role in enabling the central government to meet local aspirations and take into account ground realities in policy making. I think we have helped set up a generally good developmental administrative structure. The World Bank studies have, many other studies have mentioned the role of the IAS leadership wherever it has been politically empowered in reforms and in innovations and achievements in public service delivery. I think still the people have great faith in the collector and IAS officers, hundreds of whom have done very outstanding work, which is not documented. I think they have also prevented much wrong from being done, which also has not been documented, and many have suffered adverse consequences. I myself have had two or three experiences like that. At the same time, I think we have not done enough. We should have done more on policy reforms. Why is public health and basic education suffering? A bureaucratic system should have been reformed more. I think we should have done better. There is definitely scope for improvement, which we must do. And somewhere the service seems to have lost its esprit de corps. Esprit de corps in a service, which is like a code of conduct, is very critical. So we need to do better, having done quite well.
And what have been the challenges before it?
I think I mentioned earlier, I think the biggest challenge is the too much of politicization and the ability of the political executive to enforce its diktat. I think that even the judiciary has been unable to control. Unfortunately, the media, whether visual or written, uh, hardly ever talks of policies. Mostly it is politics. So they have given too much importance to politicians and politics. So therefore, we have not been able to get the best policies or the best reforms. Uh, Delays in projects are there, whether in planning or in implementation. We are strategically dependent upon imports for critical sectors. The absence of the general and public health infrastructure are some areas, and our nutrition status. So, in spite of many successes, there are great areas where we have not done as well as we should have done and lived up to our potential. And it's time that the service, of course, the politicians have to do it, but it's time that the service also pushed a little bit more. But public opinion would help do that better.
There is a lot of blame game when it comes to the bureaucracy. So is it justified?
Well, not only the blame on the bureaucracy, mainly I think it is pointed at the IAS. Sometimes the people confuse the two being the same thing. At the same time, they say all the policies are to be made by the politicians, and in a democracy, it's the political executive which is the final decider. So that way, I don't think that it is fair to blame the IAS, whether it was the license charge earlier, or whether it's the failure, as I said, of our strategic dependence upon imports. I know we recommended that we should develop manufacturing capacity in India for solar. Why are we dependent on China? All health secretaries have demanded more funds for the health sector, but it has not been coming. Within it, everybody has demanded more attention to public health. That hasn't happened. Now, can I blame the state education secretary for the poor state of primary education in a situation where teachers are not teaching? It's not easy to put blame on the service, but we can be blamed, I think, for partly becoming complicit or not trying too hard to change. And of course, there is a section of the service which has become both careerist and corrupt.
Sir, how to course correct?
I wish there was a good debate on this subject because it's critical for good governance in India. Uh, I think both external and internal changes are required, and this I have discussed in detail in my book. I think one of the most important things is that non-performers reach the highest positions, especially in the state. So we must have a robust system of appraisal, which I have recommended be done from the UPSC at the level of joint secretary and additional secretary, and 15 to 20% of officers who don't qualify up to minimum standards must be pensioned off, weeded out from the service. I think this is critical. Um, Again and again, it has been recommended that the entry examination for the IAS, the number of attempts and the age should be reduced considerably because we need young people in the service, but that is not happening. Transfer as an instrument of coercion has to be stopped. We must find a way to do it. Otherwise, this is one of the biggest threats. And after there is a lot of scope for improvement regarding extensions, post-retirement jobs, etc., because they serve to sort of keep the higher bureaucracy in check. So these are all important reforms. There must be a public debate. The public debate must put pressure on the political executive to adopt these changes, and this is absolutely necessary, and this is the only way we will get better governance.
Here, I would like to inform our viewers that the last two questions were in context to a chapter on reinventing the IAS, in Mr. Gupta's book. Moving on to our next question, there are many stressful moments in the call of duty, especially in the present day context. There is so much political interference. How would you suggest dealing with it, and how should the officers keep themselves motivated and focused despite all the stress?
I think right at the start, you should take that stress is going to be an occupational hazard. So you have to be mentally prepared. It comes with the service. So, you have to develop yourself strongly. But there can be three causes of stress. One is the sheer workload and the desire to get good work done, and problems which arise at the workplace which have to be sorted out. I think this is positive stress and it propels you to action and your adrenaline flows. The second stress, as you mentioned in the question, may be caused by political interference and pressures on you not to do the right thing. I think the best course here is not to succumb and do the right thing, even if there may be some adverse consequences like transfer, etc. This is a better alternative than becoming complicit. Because once you are complicit, that is the end of the story. And the third is type of stress comes from yourself trying to do wrong things. Then if you are caught, your reputation will suffer. If you are not caught, even then your reputation will suffer. This kind of stress, which I'm not aware of, is simply avoidable. So I think what you should do is do your work honestly, do your work diligently, do the right thing, and develop lots of other interests in life so that you can sustain yourself uh, outside work also, and also professionalize. If you are a professional person, you can leave the service should it be required at any time because your market value will be very great.
Now, we'd like to ask you about your other book, The Memoirs. Viewers, the title of Mr. Gupta's second book is Small Things Matter, Key to Good Governance. The name speaks for itself. Again, what was the inspiration behind this book?
I think as I grew up, I always used to feel that very small things make a lot of difference and they are sort of generally neglected. So that was the trigger for writing the book. But then the lockdown, sudden lockdown, and the problem of passing time and all, it provided the time and the opportunity to write it. I just started just a sort of nostalgic journey into my past, and it gradually became a book. It's a very simple book with a simple message that small things make a huge difference in outcomes being good or bad. And every anecdote that I relate actually is a message directly or indirectly saying that same thing. And I wanted to convey three things very briefly. I will mention. First is how in policy matters we are neglecting very small things which impact a nation very strongly. For example, the neglect of public health. Just see the pandemic and its great cost. Or look at the garbage in urban areas and our inability to deal with it, or air pollution. So I have highlighted such areas, and therefore, in a way, you may call them, they provide food for thought as well as an agenda for action. The second thing is that our system has a problem in getting results. Everybody accepts that, So I have tried to show how you can uh, use these processes and your approach in a manner and the administrative instrumentalities to try to get over this and get good results. So the anecdotes will show that. And the third and a very important thing is what should be your attitude. Because we have been talking, you must do the right thing. You must be positive. You must be a doer. You must get things done. You must take initiative, etc., etc. I used to tell my officers all the time that in my dictionary the word tomorrow does not exist. We have to do now. Time is critical. So if you have a passion and if you are wanting to do things, you will be surprised at how much can be achieved. So this is in general the kind of small things that I have mentioned, and I've tried to show how they can make a huge difference.
So what is the role of IAS in the district?
Well, IAS, the district, is the focal point of all the government's welfare and developmental programs. It is also where law and order is maintained, where crime is controlled. The district magistrate is a representative of the government, and he has responsibility for everything that happens in the district. He also manages elections and emergencies. Therefore, traditionally, the role of the district magistrate was all pervasive and very important. It also provides a direct connect with people, and the district is the only place where really you get into touch with the real life of their people and their problems and tribulations. And somehow our system has made the collector a kind of a protector and their grievance redressal officer. So for the IAS officer, it is, I think, perhaps his most important, as also his most challenging posting. There is constant problems and so much to be done. And so it is here that he or she can make their maximum contribution. And it would be interesting to know that perhaps there was a survey in which it has come out that the collector is still the most trusted institution in the country.
Okay. So what has been your most challenging experience in the district?
Well, my second district of Rohtas, where I was sent after 12 years of service, and this is 1986, was very challenging. The district had come last of 39 districts in the rural development programs the previous year. And there was corruption and disinterest. Crime was at its highest. There were 23 gangsters in the state who had rewards on their heads, and 22 of them were from this district. There was an atmosphere of fear and terror. But I have described in my book how in 2 years we sort of completely turned it around. We were constantly in the field. We were resolving people's problems, meeting them, implementing schemes well, strongly monitoring, showing independence of political people. And a year later, we came first in rural development programs in the state from 39 to first. And all these 22 gangsters were either in jail or dead. Now, how could this transformation be possible? And it shows what can be done. This is what was my greatest challenge. And I have described this. And I want to tell you one incident. We used to build a lot of houses for the poor and very good quality houses. One day, about 30, 40 build houses for us there, which we did built in record time. Now, imagine how these people had trust in the administration or in that office. Now, how you can create this credibility and trust, I think, is the fundamental thing for good administration. And if you do that, then you can achieve all kinds of things. So it is a great experience that I
I'm
had.
sure. So talking about challenges, what are the challenges in policy making?
I think policy essentially is to change things for the better in any area or to start something new. So we must first know what is wrong and why, and the policy should incorporate how such issues will get resolved. I should guess the best information available through intensive consultations with experts and stakeholders to get all views. And this is an important exercise to be done by bureaucrats and then try and reach a consensus. We should also look for what could go wrong in the implementation and incorporate provisions to ensure that the that the rollout is small. And our roadmap must be very clear. Targets realistic, timelines should be feasible. We should also do preparatory action. We have to build some public opinion about reforms, which might be somewhat difficult to do. as was in the case of the farm laws. And there should be provisions there for constant feedback and corrective action as deemed necessary. Then you will have a good policy and you will have good implementation.
Uh, Tell us about your best two experiences in policy making.
But I had two wonderful experiences. The first related to the tuberculosis program when I was joint secretary in Ministry of Health, and the other was starting the National Solar Mission when I was secretary MNRE. The first involved covering the entire country under a new program, which was called the fastest expansion in the world, involving all health sectors, preparatory activities, arranging for finances, drugs, diagnostics, making technical people managers, ensuring smooth operationalization. We had to be in touch with all the PHCs of the country, the districts of the country. So it was a quite a massive task, and so I have described this in my book. The second was the mission. It was completely something new. Solar was very expensive. There was no ecosystem. We followed a process of intense consultation with the knowledgeable people so that we could all agree together and come to a consensus of how to go ahead. Targets were reasonable. We introduced various innovative provisions to reduce risk so that finance, investment, and banking money could come in. The roadmap was very clear. We designed it incrementally so that we can learn from mistakes and improve things as we go along. And we were able to lay a solid foundation. And it is on this foundation that very high ambitions have now been introduced in our solar mission. So I think these are very good experiences which I've discussed in detail in my book.
Sir, is there a preamble for the officers, like the Ten Commandments, when it comes to principles they should follow?
Absolutely. I think, in a sense, the position of the IAS officer has been conceived, the role and responsibility to lead, and therefore officers must measure up to the highest standards. I think the first requirement is clearly integrity in its broadest sense: financial, moral, intellectual, a sense of justice and even handedness must mask all our actions. We must always do the right thing, which intuitively all of us know. Empathy, sensitivity, humility are all necessary. Personal example will always be the key. Our conduct is very important to ensure legitimacy for the institution of governance. If once questions are raised about your decisions or actions, then the credibility goes away permanently. Honest and best advice in the public interest needs to be given. We must be problem solvers, risk takers, doers, and innovators to develop best outcomes, and always stay positive and work with passion in an ethical framework. And probably you can round them up and make them the 10 commandments.
Lastly, with your vast experiences in administration, would you like to give any message to young IS officers, especially those who have just started off and could do with some guidance?
They must know that it is only the IAS which provides you with a variety of experience, constant change and challenges, a real exposure to ground conditions and people's needs and tribulations, and continuance through immense opportunities to do public good throughout your career. And these are leadership positions from the very beginning. So all this comes with both a sense of obligation and responsibility. And it is therefore that I believe that the IAS is not just a job, but a calling where public service becomes its own reward. So the young people who are joining the IAS must dedicate themselves to this mission of serving India and its people. And they should keep all those 10 commandments that we discussed as guiding principles. Then only will they justify their membership of the service.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and valuable insights, and inputs.
Thank
That is former Secretary to the Government of India and former UPSC Chairman, Mr. Deepak Gupta, speaking about IAS and his own experiences as an IAS officer. Hope you enjoyed listening to him as much as we did. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for enriching knowledge on relevant topics. This is Junali Buragohai signing off. Thank you for watching Indian Masterminds.